Victory! It's amazing to me that this stuff works. It's really, when you think about it, it's kind of a miracle. It's not just kind of a miracle. It's totally a miracle. It's an unbelievable miracle. Look at this here. I'm talking to you through this little pinhole camera on a computer that is not connected by any wires to anything. It's going to some box over here, which is transmitted to some other box somewhere, then into a satellite, and then down to your screen, and then your screens do the same thing and send it all back, and look, here it is on my screen. How is that even possible? It's black magic. It's crazy how awesome that is. You live in an age of miracles. Miracles. They're everywhere. They're all around you. They're so common you don't even notice them, all the miracles. Let's not even talk about the miracle of the gigantic helium and hydrogen bomb in the sky that rains down electromagnetic radiation onto your planet that makes everything grow and also keeps it warm and gives you a fabulous tan if you do the right things. I mean, come on. Come on. How amazing is that? I'm assuming that gigantic bomb is still up there. I cannot see it from my current location, not just because I'm inside, okay, Josh, but because it happens to be cloudy, okay? All right. So a different miracle is happening in that water is falling from the sky. So much water that I'm going to drown? No, I don't live in Houston. There's a reason I don't live in Houston. One of the reasons I don't live in Houston is because so much water falls from the sky that you can drown in it. No, no, no. I don't live in a place like that. Do we have tornadoes here? No. Do we have hurricanes here? No. Are there monsoons? No. Are there blizzards? Well, only in memory. There are no actual blizzards. It doesn't actually snow in Utah anymore. Although it is currently snowing on the mountains because it's cold. Despite this, I'm wearing short sleeves because I'm not giving up on summer. "17 participants, pretty good, pretty good." Everybody seems to be making their way into our party here. Abby, good morning. Good to see you. Carters are here. That's nice. Evan, Sabrina, good morning. We have a couple of Buddha Kofers. Look, Wolves decided to turn their cameras on. Or is that Wolves? I can never tell. Smeagol has joined us, looking especially good today. However, I still have the Precious, okay? Just so you know. In case you're thinking that that's not really the Precious, you probably can't see in this camera, but there's Elvish all over that. Okay, just FYI. Let's see. Let's put a couple more people in from the waiting room. To move that over here. Yeah, I was wondering what HLOL was. Like, that's a new, like, hype. Is that like high definition laughing out loud or whatever? I don't know. But then it got changed to Hola, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I know what that is. Unless HLOL is actually really. We're talking about natural disaster because I'm not having any, and neither are you. It looks like it's moderately sunny, in fact, where you guys are. You got sun in the sky? Brightness of various kinds. Cool. Morning, Jordan. Good to see you. Looks like Emma Cooper's in a spaceship. I don't really know what that is. Oh, wait. That's the roof of a car. Ha 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 ha. You're not in space. Don't try to fool me. Although it kind of looked like you're in space for a minute. Emma Cooper, nice to see you. Missed you a couple weeks ago. I've been really enjoying everybody's sort of their recaps of the awesomeness of a couple of supposed to be hot lol. Okay, well, bright sun and 20 degrees before. Of course you have. I mean, it's, we do live in the high desert, so occasionally that happens. I'm going to organize where am I going to put that? I'm going to put it over there to move one of my many computers. Shove that over far enough to be able, there we go. That's better. Moderately better. Any texting abbreviation means except lol. And what do you think lol means, Sabrina? I'm just checking because we had a debate about this in one of my other classes yesterday, and there was not a consensus right away. We came to a consensus later, but the immediate, yeah. Okay, good. I'm just checking. There are people of my generation and somewhat older who think it means lots of love. Which
I agree.
Yeah, but see, that makes certain things like, I'm so sad today, my dog died, and people write lol. And because they think it means lots of love, and it kind of does not mean that. And so, yeah, ouch, I think is the appropriate. That's the appropriate for that. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Somebody proposed that we need some sort of phrase, some kind of abbreviation that means actually laughing out loud, which, since lol does not mean laughing out loud, it actually means I got your joke and found it somewhat amusing. That is what that means. Right? Does it not mean that? I mean, it does. So it kind of needs some other sort of shorthand to get everybody on the same page. I think we have a few people we're still waiting for, although I don't know, because I have not looked. One moment. Let me consult the roster. Let's most everybody's here. Maxwell, did I see you? You're someplace. Yeah. Maxwell went thug life on us this morning. That's cool. It's fine. I don't care. Turn your cap whatever way you want. Flip it inside out. Don't matter to me. Here's Haley. Good. Yeehaw. Valerie Cole is Liam Wright. Yes. I think I saw that. Liam is actually either driving or like on the road somewhere. Did I see goose trees? I don't think I saw any goose trees. So we're still like a couple people were. Give myself a cool name like Dragon Rider. Yeah, you can do that. There is a way to actually do that, like during the thing here, but I gotta be honest with you, I don't really know what that is. Since I've never changed my name on this, and I know we will not have the Becks, I think, because the Becks are, I don't know, they're in Hawaii or something. Evan end up back in that. Did we lose Evan? We lost Evan. I got to put him back in. Okay, so Evan is here. I don't know. You guys are brilliant. So some of you know this. Like, this is actually apropos of what we're talking about here. But some of you know this. I teach college, and my father. But remember, if you change your name, that I will just call you whatever it is that is on your thing, because I'm not going to remember what your name is except by accident, because there's like 35 of you. Oh, Emma's in Hawaii, but not I think everybody's there. I got to I got a message like they won't have internet access in Hawaii, so record the thing. So I'm recording the thing. Anyway, so I teach college, and the college kids, of course, are 19, 20 years old, and I'm not, and my father is really, really not, and so we were talking about some sort of technology thing. We have a couple of kids who take classes from various places, and so they jump in by Zoom and whatever. And my father's like, I don't really know how to do that. And we just said, that doesn't matter. The kids do. So just tell them what you want to have happen and they'll do it. So, and he's like, oh, that's easy. And then, of course, they do know how to do it. Even if they've never used that particular computer before, they know how to do it. They can figure out how to do it. Emma says she's not in Hawaii. Okay. All right. Well, this is, if we get one more person join here, this will be the largest number of participants that Mr. C's Academy for the Seriously Deranged Intelligence has ever had in its Zoom meeting. So we should probably go over some rules with the Zoom thing here. I tend to allow chatting of various kinds. Hold on. I can't type and talk at the same time. That's not quite true. So I tend to allow chatting more or less unlimited. However, if you spam the chat with a bunch of stuff or post movie spoilers, I will just can you, which I can do by pressing on this little button right over here. And if I do that, then adios, you disappear. I will eventually maybe let you back in. I think I had to do that to Jetty last year. I'm trying to remember, but I think I had to boot Jetty once. And then I kept him in the waiting room for like 5 minutes before I let him back in. I will do that. I can also permanently can you if you make me do that. And I will do that if you force me. But I don't really think that that's going to happen. I've never had that happen. Besides, it might happen with kids from Utah, but it's not going to happen with kids from Idaho. I mean, I know how that works. So I'm expecting that we'll do fine. So chat about, and you can seriously chat about whatever you want. I'll get to that in just a minute. Thank you, Phantom. That's everyone dies. Okay, I don't know if that's a spoiler alert either, but eventually everybody dies. And since that was a galaxy far, far away, and it was a long time ago, then pretty much everybody there is dead. Okay, so you know. And even if they're not, like, the light from their galaxy is going to take so long to reach our galaxy that we'll be dead before anyway, so don't worry about that. Other things. You're going to want to, I love it when you're on camera because then I can sort of tell if you're paying attention, although not, you can fool me, of course, but that's not really my job, is to make you pay attention. I promise to be entertaining, occasionally even educational, but really it's up to you what you decide you want to learn from this class. If you want to do the work, I promise you'll learn stuff. If you don't want to learn, then I won't make you. That's entirely on you. But you probably want to consult with your parents on that subject because your parents laid out some cash for you to be here, and my guess is they want a return on their investment. So you might want to consult with them and find out what it is exactly that they want you to learn from this class. I will actually have I should have done that in the summer, but I didn't because I wasn't thinking of it. But I will actually have an assignment for you in the next couple of weeks here to tell me what it is that you would like to learn from this class. What do you want to learn? What do you want to know? Because that will help me both plan exactly what it is that we're going to talk about and also to kind of gauge whether we're succeeding in that. Um, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, when the time comes to talk, we have so many people in this class that will probably keep most people's microphones off most of the time. But when the time comes to chat, you're welcome to turn your microphones on. We'll never have more than 4 or 5 people doing that at once, because then it gets a little garbled and nobody can actually hear what's going on. If you accidentally unmute your mic and we hear gross noises from the background of your house, that's fine. I don't mind that, but I'll just mute you again. So don't worry about it. Because everybody, look, I know you got little brothers and sisters running around. You got gross noises happening, because that's just what happens. You know, it's just a home thing. We'll be meeting every other week, more or less. There you go. See, your sister's pregnant. See, that's what I'm talking about. Gross noises of various kinds. You're welcome to eat during class. Jetty periodically will fall asleep. That's all right. I don't mind that. Jetty likes to take this class from under blankets. It's all right. That's cool. I don't care. I don't care about your physical surroundings terribly. That does not make, hey, look, man, if I thought I could get away with it, I would. If you could take a class from lying in bed, why on earth wouldn't you just lie in bed, unless you're not allowed to eat there? You're welcome to eat as well, but you have to share with everyone else. So I'm not sure how that works, but you're smart and you're young, so I'm sure you know how to send like cereal and stuff through the computer. If you don't know how to do that, that's tragic, and one of you ought to get on the process of inventing how you do that. Okay, I'm not going to do it, so it's a little late for me. I don't even do math. I have, let's see, what else administratively. I do not grade in this class. I will, however, ask you to do things, and I'll be disappointed if you don't do them. I do not give out grades. I think grades are a travesty and a miscarriage of justice, and I think they're stupid and people should not do them, even in schools where giving out grades seems to be like the only thing they're really good at. I don't do that. I think it's dumb. So, but I will give you assignments. If you do those assignments, you will learn things. You will not always learn whatever it is you think that I want you to learn from whatever it is, but in this you will be wrong, because I don't actually know what I want you to learn from any of this. The best things you will learn in this class, always the best things you will learn in this class and in any class that you take, are things that happen to you inside you during the class. Connections that you make between things that you've read, experiences that you've had, chatting with your parents or with one of your friends, or just thinking through things. Not necessarily like the facts of stuff that we're going to go through. Yes, there's always, there's books to read, and there's information in the books like how many people died here and which battle came before what battle and whatever. But the truth is that it's not really all that critical if you know that stuff. It's useful to know that World War I comes before World War II. You should probably have already been able to figure that out. But in case you had not, spoilers, World War I is first. And you should probably be able to tell in basically what decade each of those wars happened, just because being an intelligent person is awesome. And people cannot deceive you and take advantage of you if you know things and you're capable of working through those things. Cool, Emma, go for it. But that does not mean that the most important things that you're going to learn in this class are how many people died at Passchendaele. It's a lot, by the way. I've now ruined the World War for you. Sorry. Sometimes that happens. The most important thing is whatever it is that you're supposed to learn about the Battle of Passchendaele, okay? And I don't know what that is. I can't possibly know what that is. You probably don't even know what that is. But there's good news, and that is that there is a God who does. And this is my last sort of declaration about what this class is about. Yes, this is a class on history, specifically a period of history from about 1910 to about 1945, 1946. Okay? So we're going to cover 30, 35 years of world history in 26 classes, which is more or less impossible. Okay? I understand that that's impossible. But that's okay because that's not actually what the class is for. My purpose in this class is for you to create a space for you to become better people. If you learn a ton of stuff about the Minié rifle and living conditions in the trenches in Flanders, that's great. But if that stuff does not change you as a person and make you somebody better, then I failed in this class. Let's say we failed in this class because I can't do that alone. You have to participate in that process. I'm not saying you won't learn a ton about rifles. What I'm saying is that may not be what you're supposed to learn here. And if you learn stories that help you become a better person and you don't learn anything about rifles, that's still a win for us. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm using the material in history, but I'm using that to give you space to learn how to become a better person. If you don't become a better person through the course of this class, no matter what else you did learn, I failed. I take that responsibility very seriously. I will do my study. I will put my work in. I promise you this. And if you do that too, then I also promise you that you will come out of this class a different person. Ideally a better person, I hope. I really screwed up if you don't come out a better person. Thank you, Sabrina. That's very kind of you. You really dug on that game. That's good. Okay, is everybody clear on that? For the fullness of mine intent is to bring souls to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob and be saved. That's what I do. It ought to be all I do. It's not quite because I'm a human being who makes serious mistakes. However, that's what I want to do with everything. And that's what I'm going to try to do with this class. And I know that using wars to bring people to God is probably weird, but I'm doing it anyway, all right? And you're weird because you're here, so we're weird together, and we'll have this weird experience that I really believe that there is a God who wants us to have together, and maybe we're going to come out something better. I hope so. I will, I promise, become a better person through our association here. And if you don't quit on me, I won't quit on you, and the same thing will happen to you. Fair? Yes? Good? We all on the same page? Cool. Let's talk about the calm before the storm. We started our diplomacy adventure in what year? Anybody remember that? Thank you, William. 1910. That is correct. When does World War I actually start?
Was it 1980?
Actual shots. Not 1814, Smeagol, although there is almost certainly some kind of a war there. Oh, that's the end of the War of 1812, which was not actually fought in 1812, but whatever. Also in the War of 1812, the bloodiest and most important battle of the entire war was fought after the peace treaty was signed. It's just, the problem is it takes a month and a half to get a message from Washington, D.C. to Louisiana. So the people in Louisiana didn't know the war was over, and they kept shooting each other. Anyway, you almost barf if you see blood. Okay, well, I promise you black and white pictures of blood. There is a movie, actually, that eventually we are going to probably watch. One of our get-togethers will be a movie day, and we'll have the usual popcorn, and you guys can't watch a movie, you know, popcorn and soda, whatever. So anyway, the movie is, what is the movie called? I'm trying to remember. And hold on, I just got a message from Julianne Hanson. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing people who are trying to get into the class before we get too deeply into it. Cool. All right, we will get one more. Simon's coming. So be a doctor or something. Doctor Who? I love that phrase. Okay. Hold on a minute. The movie is by a Peter Jackson. You will remember, most of you, because you are serious nerd level people, you will know who Peter Jackson's famous for. What Peter Jackson is famous for, right? Peter Jackson? Yes? No, it's not a nerd. Well, it's no. Millions of people saw it, but nerds are like super into Peter Jackson. Smeagol should know what movie that is. Yes, because Smeagol is actually in the movie, so she would know. And there we go, 22 participants, new record. Congratulations. Everybody give yourself a round of applause for being here. Welcome, Simon. Glad to have you. You're vibrating. Okay. So Peter Jackson did the Lord of the Rings movies and the 3-part disaster that was The Hobbit. But then because he is so rich, he has an island made of gold and he can do absolutely anything he wants. He went back and sifted through the archival footage of World War I. We had cameras in World War I, not just still cameras, but movie cameras in World War I. The problem was that those cameras, the footage that they shot is incompatible with our modern video systems. So they tend to run, everybody sort of moves around jerkily and they're all in black and white. So what Peter Jackson did was he took all this footage, slowed it down, and put it in color so that it looks just like, and then he added sound to it because they didn't have sound films then. We don't get talkies until the 1920s. And it is incredible, brilliant, heartbreaking stuff. And we will watch, the movie is called They Shall Not Grow Old. And we will watch at least most of that movie together for one of our get-togethers. The next one, I think, is in first part of November. I think that's the next time I come up there, is the first weekend in November. So another 6 weeks or so. But it's important to remember when we're talking about this stuff, even though it seems like it's a million years ago. And to you guys, I'm sure nothing that happened before you were born. I don't think it's a documentary, so they don't use the same kind of rating system. But if it is rated R, then I'll make sure we're vidangeling it, and it won't be. Those of you not acquainted with VidAngel, it is a war movie. So war movies that are not R, like what are they actually showing you about the war? Because wars are R-rated, all of them. There's no such thing as a PG war. Although now I kind of want to write a short story where they have a war, but it has to be PG. And how would that work? Anyway, I'm not going to do that today. So I have other things to do today. Where was I? So it's important to remember, one of the things I loved about this film is its commitment to showing the people who were in combat as actual people. It's easy to look back on people who were, this is 100 years ago, this war. And it's easy to look back and kind of forget that these are real people. But we really shouldn't do that. It devalues them and it devalues the experience. So try to keep in mind, we're going to talk today about what the conditions were like in the different countries that participated in the war. But remember that in every one of these countries, the people that we're talking about are real people. They lived and breathed and ate and slept and died, and the same things that you're going to do And they didn't want to go to war and get shot any more than you would. It's worthwhile, I think, to remember that we're talking about real people. That every one of the people that we're going to discuss today and throughout the rest of this course, these are real people. And some of them are your ancestors. Some of them are my ancestors. We're affected by this. This mattered. And even all the way to today. Well, it wasn't just Hitler that was dehumanized, although you're right, Sabrina. That's true. But everybody dehumanized everybody. In order to be able to shoot somebody, you have to kind of stop thinking of him as a person. Unless you're a really, really mentally strong individual, which I hope that we'll sort of grow to become. And we even now dehumanize the Nazis, even though every single one of those Nazi soldiers was a person. Every one of them. We will, in the World War II section, for you older kids, raise your hand if you are 15 or older. You count, Elizabeth, you count. Okay, so not too many, but if you're 15 or older, William raised his hand, even though we can't see it. I'm going to recommend a couple of books when we get into the World War II section that are actually written from where the main character is either German or, in fact, in one of the books, outright a Nazi. Not because, well, because they're people. And trying to understand people makes it possible to do two things. Number one, expand your soul so you become a better person. But number two, it makes you understand how to defeat them. If you know your Ender's Game, you know that the only way that you can truly defeat your enemy is to come to know them well enough that you know what they're going to do even before they know. Is that Taya? Is that my Taya? Oh, hi. But you also know, if you know your Ender's Game, that once you come to know your enemy well enough that you can defeat him, it is almost impossible not to come to love him. And that's worthwhile. Because we are commanded to love everybody. And there's no asterisk on that. Jesus did not say, love your neighbor unless he smells or forgets to brush his teeth or wears a swastika on his shirt. There's no footnote, okay? We get to love everybody. Yes, even Hitler. That's really hard. There are even more difficult people in World War II to figure out how to love. Hitler was bad, but he was also like kind of a little bit crazy, which meant he wasn't particularly good at what he was trying to do. But there were other people who were just as bad and way smarter, and those guys were very good at what they did. And trying to figure out how to love those people is hard. Maybe you can help me do that. Yeah, lawful evil people are terrifying. I happen to be chaotic good. I don't care. All right, so let's talk about 1910. Who did some research on the country that they played in our simulation? Would like to tell us a little bit about what it was like in that country, where they are, where the country was, what it was like before the war began. Maxwell, I saw you actually like physically raise your hand as well as electronically raising your hand. Why don't you start us off? Tell us what country we're talking about and kind of what you learned. Unless your mic doesn't work and you can't do that. Wait, he's back. Except I think he's typing. Macaroni noodles. Let me guess what country that was. Ah, dang it. All right, well, you'll have to type stuff in the chat then. Dragon Rider Sabrina. Hey, you want to give yourself a handle? That's fine. I went by Apollo most of the time I was in elementary school and switched to Starbuck when I got into junior high. So that was my CB handle, and I still use it all the time. My gamer tag was the cat. That was back when you could get away with a gamer tag. It didn't have numbers all through it because there weren't 700 million people playing all these games. So when you went to an arcade and you saw my name on the top of the leaderboard, it was always, I was the cat. I was only on the top of the leaderboard a little bit. Sabrina, what would you like to tell us about your country? Yeah, now you have to add random numbers. Yeah, but, you know, whatever. It's okay. I'd have to make the cat with like a 3 in the and the C at T for the, you know, maybe in a hashtag or whatever. Yeah. Roughly 1910, roughly in 1910. What's going on in your country? Somebody just open up their mic and talk. Somebody besides me.
Yeet.
Hello.
Sweet. Ironically, the quiet one is the one who opened up his microphone and started talking.
Hello, quiet one.
Hello.
Yo, what's up, my dude?
What's up, Ethan? All right.
Party?
So,
It is the biggest party.
Save
I
it for
did
the
a little bit
break.
of studying
Tell
up.
us something about your country.
All right. So, I'm going to stop talking like a freshman. Okay. I did a little bit of studying up on the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, back in 1910. Now, the Ottoman Empire, there isn't a whole lot to it. Honestly, it's just chaotic. They had spent the last 50 years fighting a bunch of different wars. They were low on resources, on machinery. And they're in complete and utter chaos. So that's what led to them joining the Germans is for 2 reasons. One, nobody else would accept them as an ally. Nobody wanted them but Russia, except that Russia was going to take control and protect them, and they didn't want Russia taking control of their country. And then the second reason is Germany actually needed the Ottoman Empire because the Ottoman Empire is their trade route. That's how Germany got its stuff. So that was a huge thing for Germany, and that's why they had to get them on their side.
Beautiful. All right, let me do something here. I'm going to share my screen. It's probably dangerous. I have no idea what's on my screen. You guys are going to see all my secrets. Well, not all my secrets. That'd be crazy. Let's see. What does that look like? Oh, I know what it looks like. Here we go. Let's move your photos over here so I can see your faces while I do this. Drop Valerie Cole here. Where's my chat? Don't go away. Okay, good. Yes, it's on purpose. Okay, so let's see. We need a map. Do you guys like that map I made? That map took so long to make. That took forever to make that big map a couple weeks ago. Man, I have it.
Good job, because it looked great.
Thank you.
That's why you didn't want us stepping on it.
Let's see if we can get a map of the countries involved and a good map of the World War I topography. Yeah, that'll do. That one right there looks pretty good. Okay, y'all see that? No, let's try and get Valerie Cole in here. See if she can get in. You all see that essentially? It's not a very big map, but it
Oh, Italy.
Okay, so that's a little bigger. That'll help. Okay, here's Germany up here. Those of you who played Germany, you know where most of these guys are, right? But remember, wars and Josh mentioned this a minute ago. If you spend all your time fighting wars, you end up without a lot of resources. Wars destroy stuff. They consume vast quantities of resources. They consume money. They consume cars, houses, people. You can run out of these things. And if you fight wars periodically over a period of, what did Josh say, 50 years? Is that what you said? If you fight 50 years worth of war, that's going to drain an enormous amount of your resources. So when we're looking at these countries, you have to also think about what are the resources these countries have to put in play. Now, if you're Russia and you have the world's largest country, you would think you would never run out of resources. But there's a couple things that the Russians don't have that could have made them significantly more difficult to deal with. Number one is the Russians, there's not that many. It's a gigantic country, but there's not that many people in it. So the Russians can run out of people. And when they start to do that, then they trade land for people and they start backing off and let you freeze to death before you can get to them, which we'll get to that later. The Ottoman Empire is huge, and understand this right in here, this area, right, what's called the Levant. This is where Israel is. Israel's right here. This that you can see right here is the Dead Sea. This little dot down here is the Dead Sea. This is one of the most fertile areas, one of the most economically productive areas, and one of the richest areas in metals in the world. So if you can get stuff from here, that really makes an enormous difference. Now, also, although it's not on this map, if we go here farther to the east, what's over here? East of Persia and the Seljuks and all of these. What's over in here? Asia. And what's in Asia? The end of the world. Yeah, actually. China. People. Huge numbers of people. China has a lot of that, but so does India. Remember the two largest in terms of population? The two most populous countries in the world are China and India, who happen to share a border. So an incredible number of people. Also, spices, metals, all kinds, pepper, cinnamon, all kinds of various sorts of resources, sugars, all kinds of important things. If you don't think those things are important, look those up. Also, saltpeter. Why might you need a chemical called saltpeter? Yeah, because you use it to make gunpowder. And it's kind of useful if you're going to be fighting a war. Also, remember, who is it that figured out first how to make explosives? That would be China. Yeah. And the only way to get to China, remember, we have not dug the Suez Canal here through Egypt, so we can't cut off Africa. If you want to get to China, the only way to get there is to sail down around Africa, through the Indian Ocean, around through the worst pirate-infested water in the world in the Strait of Malacca. Look it up. And then around to China to get to that stuff, which is an incredibly long way to go. And it takes forever. Or you can hike it. Now, it's a long way to hike. But if you're hiking it, well, you don't have to hike it. You got motorized transportation, okay? You put it in a car or trucks or whatever and truck it over. It's some terrible land. Now, you got to truck it over part of the Himalayas. You got to go through Afghanistan. You have to go through Iraq. It wasn't Iraq then. It was called Persia then, but whatever. It's pretty, rough terrain, but it's a lot quicker. You can do it a month sooner, but you end up right here. You pretty much have to end up right here. especially because you cannot go north because it's frickin' cold up in here. And it's also Russia. And you don't want to go through Russia because Russia's the enemy, right? So as soon as the war starts, if you're the Germans and you need to get this stuff, the only way to get it is to come through here on what's called the Silk Road. Yeah, there's cold, like Boise cold, and then there's cold, which is like Canada cold, and then there's frickin' cold, which is Siberia, which is like everything from Moscow to the east for like 6 time zones. You could take the entire United States and drop it in there twice and no one would ever find it again. Like, it's that big. It's incredibly huge. But not the Siberian tiger stupid cold. Yeah, that's like Siberian tiger stupid cold. If you don't have a thick fur coat, you're dead. Even if you do have a thick fur coat, you're probably dead. So the Ottoman Empire is a hugely important ally to the Germans. The problem is, as Josh pointed out, and Josh, turn your mic on for a minute. I want to have a conversation with you about this. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. So if, let's say you're the Ottoman Empire, and you were, okay? And Germany comes and says, I want to make an alliance with you. And you're like, fine. What's your first question?
Well, the first question in most cases for the Ottoman Empire is how, when they be treated, how is this going to work? Because like with the Russians, they wanted to do a protectorate, which is basically where they come in, they take over the area and they protect it. The Ottoman Empire was being torn down. They just needed time to rebuild themselves.
Right.
And that's what they wanted. They want
Excellent.
protection.
That's excellent. Okay. So you guys remember a couple weeks ago, you have your little country, you got your people together. Somebody comes over and says, hi, I'm from France or whatever. We want to make an alliance with you. What is your first question?
What can you do for us?
What's in it for me? Okay, great. What's in it for me?
Candy.
Candy. The Germans you can't really grow sugar in Germany. Nice idea. Love the idea. Okay? But you got to have something to bribe people with. Otherwise, why would they ally with you? And it's kind of difficult, as Josh pointed out. The countries are not like right next to each other or anything. So how is Germany going to get stuff to the Ottoman Empire? But that's what the Ottoman Empire, if you don't agree, we will kill you. Okay. That is a viable reason to ally with somebody.
It's actually kind of funny, though, because the Ottoman Empire, the military actually looked up to Germany. They looked at them and said that they're the most powerful military. And actually, some of the officers in the Ottoman Empire's military were from Germany.
Well, okay, let's back up a little bit because this is a brilliant point and worth paying a little bit of attention to. Let's go back to the Revolutionary War. Somebody tell me at least basically when was the Revolutionary War? Blackmail also works. Oh, yes, sort of. Until people find out. You can only use blackmail until people find out that it doesn't work anymore. Let's go back to 70 to 79. That you're in the right decade, so you're good. Abby, well done. That's correct. Starts in 1776, sort of. There's a very famous engagement in 1777, right around Christmas. In fact, on Christmas Day. Does anybody remember what that was? It was a very famous engagement at Christmas, 1777. There's a famous painting of George Washington standing in a boat.
Weren't they crossing the Payette River?
The Delaware.
Delaware.
Delaware, yes. The crossing of the Delaware River. Very good. On the other side of the Delaware River were a bunch of guys in British uniforms. But who were those guys? Were they British?
No,
American
they were German.
soldiers.
They were Hessians.
They were
Germans.
Hessians, which are Prussian, not Germans. But, I mean, now there is no Prussia, and all of Prussia is in Germany now, so whatever. Well, some of it's in Poland. But anyway. Okay, so, wow. A fat man to eat. That went dark. Okay, so I will try and make sure that I'm not that fat at Christmas time. Mr. C has deliveries to make, and I don't want to get eaten. Okay, so what? But wait a minute. Wait. I thought the Revolutionary War was between the colonists and the British Empire. What are Hessian soldiers doing in Delaware? What are the Germans doing in Delaware?
They were hired by the British.
And why were they hired by the British?
Because they needed more people.
Okay, but not just any people. There were lots of people around. They could have just hired, a bunch of people at random, but they didn't. Now, they weren't actually aligning with the British. That's fascinating. That's a good point. They weren't actually. The Germans were not allied with the English. In fact, the Germans and the British have never been allied that I remember. Why would they did need people who could fight? The terrain in Delaware is like the terrain in Boise. Anybody can fight there.
I read somewhere that the Prussian soldiers were like super good and they trained them like a ton.
Bingo. That's right. They're there because they're the best soldiers in the world. Yes, this was not their finest hour. Yes, they went and got drunk. Yeah, they did not pay attention to their spy network that told them that the Americans were coming, but they didn't read the message, so they didn't know. Yeah, well, alcohol was bad, but it's a German tradition. Like it's Christmas, we're going to get drunk. That's what you do. So they did. George Washington was like, we're not going to get drunk, and we're going to sail across the Delaware in the middle of the night and surprise them. And they did, and it worked. But the reason the British are hiring the Hessians is because the Hessians are really great. Here's another little anecdote from that war. When you're in Valley Forge, which is either the winter of 1777 or the winter of 1778, I can't remember which, and things are going really bad, and the American soldiers are freezing to death, etc., Washington took their mind off the fact that they didn't have any food by drilling them. But he didn't drill them. Who did he get to drill them? Does anybody actually know this story? Do you guys know this? You should know this story. Although Lafayette, yeah.
Didn't he get some Russian dude? I don't know his name, but I think he was Russian. He got a Russian dude.
Not a Russian.
No, I thought okay.
Given the conversation that we're having right here, what nationality would you guess this guy was?
German.
And you would guess he was German, and you would be correct. That is right. Yes, Smeagol, that's right. He was a Prussian. His name was von Steuben. And he was the one who whipped the Continental Army into something resembling reasonable shape. Okay? So the Prussians have a long military tradition. There is an extensive military tradition in Germany, and Prussia is back and forth, part of Germany, of military prowess. They're the best soldiers. Plus, Germany, well, let's go through this. Suppose you're going to buy a car from Europe. Name a European kind of car. Before the Huns arrive, yes. And these are the Huns, by the way.
Or something.
So, what car?
Model T.
A Model T is an American car.
Ferrari.
Ferrari, okay? Ferraris. There are like 12 of them. What?
Porsche.
Yes, Porsche.
Mercedes-Benz.
Mercedes-Benz. Porsche.
Volkswagen.
Volkswagen.
BMWs.
And these are all being made where?
Here.
No, well, they are now.
BMWs are German.
Germany.
Yes. Bayerische
Go
Motor.
Germany.
Yeah, Bayerische Motorwerk is what BMW stands for. Volkswagen,
Citroen.
the car of the people. Mercedes-Benz, Benz is a German, so is Mercedes if it comes to that. Ferraris are indeed Italian, yes, that's right. Ferraris are Italian, but there's only like 20 of those. There are other European car makers, but their cars suck, and so nobody drives them, okay? All of the best car makers in Europe, they're all in Germany. At a certain point, almost all of the machinery in Europe was made in Germany. The Germans have mines in the Bavarian highlands right here. The Bavarian highlands are what divide Austria and Germany, okay? They have metal, and they have these fantastic motorworks where they make all kinds of stuff, anything that moves. Tanks later. The British will be the first one to develop the tank, and then the Germans will say, hey, that's a great idea, and make all the best ones. Yeah, in World War II, the Germans are really good with machines. Like, they're really, really, really good with machines. When I was living in Hungary.
For really long time. So basically, that means that Germany would be a great ally.
Yes, well, if you need
Yep.
bombs and guns and cars and stuff, which the Ottoman Empire desperately needed because this area in here, not big on manufacturing. So the Germans have all the machines. And the Ottoman Empire, what are they going to give them? Well, access to the trade routes that they need in order to keep their war machinery alive. So it's a pretty good match, except that, as it turns out, the Ottoman Empire drained way more from the Germans than the Germans had to give them, and so it ended up being not a very... Soviet nothing was better. The Soviets didn't make anything better than anybody else. Fueron buenos los tanques. German tanks are the best. But not in World War I, because practically nobody... Yeah, well, the Russians, insane production rate. Yeah, they did. What the Russians contribute to most wars is vast quantities of land that make it impossible to invade them. But
In World War II.
They did pour a ton of troops down into this area in here, which came to war as well. Were the tanks good? Not in World War I, no. But in World War II, they were. Depending on what you want to do with them. And we'll talk about that later as well. So think about this for a minute. You're the German Empire. You have this great military tradition. Do you think you're going to be able to kick the Russians' butts? Yes, of course you do. You think you can beat anybody. You know you can beat the French. You're pretty sure you can take over the Russians. And all you need is not to have to fight these guys down here. They also speak German. Now look at linguistically. The Germans, all the German-speaking people, all were allies.
That's smart.
These countries in here, not Romania, but Serbia, Bulgaria, etc., these guys all speak Slavic languages. If you speak Serbian, you can understand Russian. If you speak Polish, you can understand Russian, and vice versa. The languages are pretty close. This is not true of Hungarian, which nobody speaks and nobody understands. But it is true of German, even really bad German, like they speak in Austria, and Germany, where they speak German. Right. I mean, there was a lot of debate about which side of this war the United States should come in on. But in the end, we went with the guys who speak the same language we do, because you almost always do that. Yeah, it's very much like British and American, actually, Sabrina. Yeah. Americans speak really, really bad English.
Actually, English speak really, really bad American.
Actually, most English speak incredibly good American, which is why we get all sorts of English actors, bring them over here and make them, I don't know, Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Fair
Tom
point.
Holland.
He's supposed to be a kid from Queens. You know where he's actually from?
Britain.
Yeah, London. You don't see a lot of British films where they take American actors and bring them over there and try to teach them how to do a British accent because it doesn't work. But
Well, you know,
There's also Doctor Strange.
yes,
yeah,
Benedict
that's true.
Cumberbatch, who is also not American, but who plays an American in superhero movies.
Well,
They
you
can
know,
do that for some reason. You'd bring them over here and they just, Mel Gibson, who's Australian.
Tom Holland. Maybe.
Tom Holland, who
Tom
is
Holland.
not Tom Hiddleston. Oh my gosh. Be still my beating heart. I love that man. Okay. You're bored now. Okay, well, we'll get back to shooting people, Sabrina, and you'll be fine. All right, so remember the geopolitics part of politics. Your geography matters. If the people in Serbia speak a language that's very close to the language they speak in Russia, which side is Russia going to be on? Most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Chris Hemsworth. Also, yeah, like almost all of the Avengers are not actually from America, but that's okay.
Isn't Black Widow from Russia?
No, actually, she's an American. Her name is Scarlett Johansson.
Okay.
And she does not, in fact, have Russian accent because she's not very good at doing Russian accent. But Russian accent is actually very fun to try and do. It is not exactly the GRU accent. The GRU accent is really more like Serbian or like Yugoslavian. But Russian accent is very good.
It's really fun to do.
And really fun to do, is true. I cannot deny this. Okay, let's go back to our map here for a minute. Who else? So we talked a little bit about the Ottomans. The Ottoman Empire is kind of crumbling. I don't know. It makes GRU funny. I don't know, I guess. The Ottomans are kind of crumbling, not really doing very well, but the Germans need their stuff, so the Germans agree to become their allies. That turns out to be a problem. Being allies with the Austro-Hungarians turns out to be a serious problem too, because although those guys think they're just going to roll right in and take over Serbia after Serbia shoots their Archduke, the truth is that the Austro-Hungarians have serious problems. Who did some research on Austria-Hungary? I would like to talk a little bit about that.
Just something that I read in the World War One book, is that actually really the reason why this war started, well, one reason why is because like Serbia warned Austria not to send him there or else they'll have trouble, but Austria didn't listen, and so he came down there anyway, and they assassinated him.
This is not untrue. Admittedly, I mean, look, he's the Archduke of this country, right? So realistically speaking, he should be able to go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, the crazy thing is that he was actually with the cause of the Serbians, but the Serbians murdered him. So, that's
Yeah,
great.
because that wasn't communicated to the Serbians, so yeah. So they didn't know that.
So what you're saying is there are communication difficulties. There's serious questions about who knows what. We are not going to talk today about the assassination of the Archduke. We're going to do that next time. But if you want an example of a completely botched series of random events that should never have happened, this is going to be, you're going to love this because you're not going to believe the number of weird things that have to happen in order for this assassination to actually come about. Let's see if we have, I wanted to look up here is an ethnic map of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In Hungarian, as a matter of fact. So, okay, on map 1, remember we have this big blob that says, the big orange blob that says Austria-Hungary, except that that's not really what that blob looks like. This is what the blob actually looks like. Yeah, okay, so let's go through these then. This group in here are the Hungarians. These are the Magyarok in here. They speak Hungarian, which is not at all like German. Here, the yellow here is all people who speak German, who are German ethnicity. But notice you have pockets of German ethnicity in here, all over, sort of scattered all over through the rest of the group of people. Roman here, this sort of, I don't know, greenish blue here. This is people who speak Romanian. These are the Romani. Germs rhyme with worms, yeah. Okay, so all of this in here, these are all people who speak Romanian, which is, again, nothing like Hungarian or German. Let's see, what else do we have? Czechs. We have an enormous group of people up here who speak Czech. These people are, Czech is a Slavic language, so they have more in common with the Russians than they do with the Germans. Who else do we have? Slovaks. That's these people in here. Their language is close to, but not identical to, Czech, even though we're going to make Czechoslovakia out of them and smash them together. It is also a Slavic language, so these people are more like the Germans than they are like the country that they belong into. Lendialek, that's these people in here are Polish. They do not speak Czech or Slovak, although it's not too far off. They're much more linguistically like the Russians, except that the Russians have been burning their country to the ground for the last 100 some odd years, so they hate the Russians with a white-hot passion. But the Germans have also been doing that, so they hate the Germans just as much. Let's see, Ruthene here. These are Ruthenians who speak some other sort of language. I don't even know what Ruthenian is, to be honest with you. Olas. These are Italians. A big chunk of this part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is actually Italian. You've got Ladins and Friulians down here. You have Serbs. That's this red stuff in here. You also have Croats. That's the pinker stuff in here. And by the way, although their language is really, really close to each other, they hate each other with, I mean, like a bag of cats. They hate each other. Religious differences. The Serbs are Christians. The Croats are Muslims. Most of this area up in here was dominated for a long time by the Ottoman Turks, so who are Muslims. So a lot of these people converted to Islam. So these pink people in here, these are all people who are Muslims, and the red people are all Christians, and they're checkerboarded through here all over the place. So they're living next to each other, but really they don't like each other at all. And then we have some Slovenians in here. The Slovenians don't like the Italians or the Czechs or the Croats or the Hungarians or the Austrians. So here you've got this gigantic country, right? And it looks like it's one country, but it's not even close to one country. It's like 50 different ethnic groups all mashed up together. There isn't anything in, like, there's no way even to relate this to what it's like in the United States. Like, there is nothing like that in the United States. Heck, there's nothing like that pretty much anywhere in the world. And everyone hates each other. There is a song about this by the Kingston Trio. On our break, maybe I will play it. Okay, but that's what you're dealing with if you're Austro-Hungarians. Those of you who did your Austro-Hungarian research, tell me some more stuff about them.
I did the Austria-Hungary like research thing, but basically it was already talked about what I learned about. So yeah.
Okay. Is this I'm talking to my Austro-Hungarians here. Is this a like scientifically really well developed area? Like everybody here is super rich and modern?
From
No.
what I read, they were pretty advanced.
Okay,
Like
where
they were
though?
like the third.
Where
what-
in that map, let me go back to my map. In that map, which part of that map is well developed and like fairly prosperous?
I think it's the more Austrian side.
Yeah, this part right here, the Austria
Yeah.
part. Yeah, because Germany's right here.
Right.
Okay. What about this part?
I think it was more more tribal and not as developed.
And you would be correct about that. The Hungarian part is always behind the Austrian part. And when you get out here and down in here, you're lucky to have roads a lot of places. Okay, so
Right.
so you've got rich people here and poor people here. Historically speaking, do rich people and poor people get along super great?
Not really.
Not really, no. And that's correct. In this, so you have this huge patchwork empire that speaks 20 different languages, that has 15 different ethnicities, that's every kind of different religion that you can imagine, even within the Christianity, okay? These guys here, they are Catholic Christians, Roman Catholic Christians. But these people are not. They're not Roman Catholic Christians. They are Calvinist Christians, which means they're Protestants, not Catholics. Do Protestants and Catholics get along, historically speaking?
No, they don't.
No, they don't. Up here are your Czechs. One of the greatest of the reformers of the Middle Ages is a man named Jan Hus, who was Czech. So all of this area in here, these are all Hussites. The Hussites and the Calvinists don't get along, and the Catholics and the Hussites also don't get along. And if to make things worse, these are all Roman Catholics here in the yellow, but right over the border is Russia. They are Russian Catholics. These are Eastern Orthodox Catholics, and the Eastern Orthodox Catholics and the Roman Catholics have been shooting each other for 400 years. Well, no, because they didn't have guns for 400 years. But they were stabbing each other before that, and now they're shooting each other. So you've got 10 different religions, you've got 15 different languages, you've got rich, poor, all kinds of problems. Is it any surprise if you pack all that together? Okay, here's a metaphor that you will probably get. All right, it is fall, and or getting into fall. We're just finishing up. How many religions are there? Hundreds. There are only like a dozen or so in this area, though. All right, so how many of you have like lots and lots and lots of tomatoes? Tons of tomatoes, and you make like canned tomatoes, you make spaghetti sauce and all kinds of stuff. Okay. It's time to make the spaghetti sauce. We're going to take tomatoes and peppers and onions and oregano and garlic and all of this other stuff, and we're going to put it all in a pot, and then we're going to screw the lid of the pot down super tight and turn the stove on high.
Explosion.
There'll be too much pressure.
Ta-da! Suppose you
You
had
might
fire.
want to do that outside.
Yeah, you might want to do that. If you try this experiment at home, and Mr. C did not tell you to do this. No, I did not.
Too bad I want to do it.
I didn't tell you to do it. That's all I'm saying.
I know.
You can't get me fired for telling you to do this. I did not tell you to do this, okay? All right, so if you do that, you're going to get an explosion. So let's say you took Serbs and Croats and Austrians and Hungarians and Romanians and Slavs and Czechs and put them all in the same place, drew a big line around it and said, you're all one country, and then screwed it down tight. What would happen?
A lot of fighting.
Explosion.
Look, World War I.
Yay.
World War I is really just a bad spaghetti recipe.
Not yay. I mean,
Not yay. Exactly. Yes. Exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. Now, okay, this is a really important point that I want to get across here. If you have a country where you have Germans and Dutch and English and Irish and Italians and, although not very many, and Scots and all of that, and you put them all in the same area, like, the 13 colonies, which don't get the idea that everybody in the 13 colonies looks like George Washington, okay? Because that's not exactly how that worked. But let's say you put all of that together in the same place. How would you keep that from blowing up where everybody's trying to kill everybody else? How would you do that? How do you keep your spaghetti sauce from exploding?
unscrew the lid.
Yeah.
Let a little pressure off at a time until you don't have any pressure left.
Politically speaking, how do you do that? How do you do that, politically speaking?
Separate the circle into parts.
Yeah,
Let them each do their own thing and not have them like be super tight.
you're a genius. Too bad the Austrians didn't figure that out. What is the government that they decided to put the colonies together with? You got 13 different colonies. They don't know each other. They don't care about each other. And some of them actively hate each other. All kinds of different religions, different languages, all sorts of stuff. But they don't end up shooting each other. Why not?
Because they didn't put them on single pot all together and mixing up.
They mixed it together, but they let it boil. They let it boil. You want to argue? Argue. You want to protest? Protest. You want to say, you know what, we don't want to do that. We're going to elect somebody who's not going to vote for that. Go ahead. We're going to let you vote. We're going to give you an opportunity to express yourself politically and without trying to stomp down on you. If you want to publish a newspaper that says that George Washington is a donkey's backside, you can go right ahead. Now, most people will disagree with you because really George Washington is pretty darn great, but you can have an election in which people for Jefferson are calling people who are for Adams bald, stinking, and toothless. I will actually show you a political ad in which that somebody made that actually quotes from the newspapers who were talking about this. You can hate each other all you want, but we're not going to shut you down for saying so.
You need freedom of speech.
You need freedom of speech. You need freedom of, let's go down the list, people. Thought. You need to be able to go down the first.
Freedom of religion.
Freedom of religion.
Freedom of the press.
Freedom of assembly. Let's just go right down the First Amendment.
Freedom of the press.
You need freedom of the press. Look, press, assembly, speech, religion, ta-da! All you really need is the First Amendment. Especially if the Second Amendment is you can all have guns. Then you really, 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 really need the First Amendment to say, but you can talk to each other all you want, and we're never going to make a law that says you can't do that. What is the governmental system in Austria-Hungary? What is it? What?
Kings.
They have a king. They have a monarchy. Do they have a representative democracy?
No.
How about Germany? What's the government in Germany?
Communism.
No,
Wait, no. It's not
Dictatorship?
it's a monarchy.
Hmm.
What's the government in Russia?
I'm gonna guess monarchy.
You're going to guess correctly. What's the
The only-
government in the Ottoman Empire?
The only one who's not a monarch.
Monarchy.
It's a monarchy. Wow, that's weird. The only one who's not a monarchy is what?
Switzerland?
US.
America.
Well, okay, but America's not in the war yet.
It's,
I think
France, technically, but only technically. France is really, they have a legislature. A lot of these countries actually have legislatures, but nobody pays any attention to them. The British are effectively not a monarchy at this point.
The problem with a monarchy is that if the king or queen decides that they want to go to war, no one else has a choice. And so it's just
What are you going to do?
nothing, I guess. If you're in the army, you have to go out and risk your life.
Okay, so, and we played the game and we sort of saw this when you pack these countries cheek by jowl, but look inside the countries themselves. How can you possibly avoid a war? The miracle is that it took this long to have a world war. Not that you finally had one. That you finally had one is like totally inevitable. You can't possibly pack all these people together like this and then try to make them all walk the same and talk the same and do the same things. Did you know that in Serbian schools, you were not allowed to speak Serbian? Because
that is stupid.
Because the Austro-Hungarians said, no, this is the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You all have to speak German. This is a bad idea.
Freedom of languages.
I'm just going to point out that there are a really large number of people in the United States right now that are on massive crusades about everybody should speak English and nobody should speak Spanish. I just want to point out that we have tried this before and it didn't work as well as you might think that it would work. I'm just going to point that out. I'm not forecasting or prophesying anything. I'm not saying these people are wrong. I'm just saying as a historian, I'm looking at my map and I'm saying to myself, the way you keep the country from exploding is give people as much freedom as you possibly can. Historically speaking, that seems to be the way that you do that. Yes, and as it turns out, Sabrina, second generation immigrants, almost all their kids speak perfect English. Many of them also speak whatever their parents' language is, but they almost all speak perfect English. Or, you know, as perfect as our English is, which is not that perfect. Okay, let's move up the chain a little bit and talk to the Germans. Oh, you lovely Germans. You were unfortunately almost exterminated. I think you had one army left on the board when it finally ended. What's the problem if you're a German? What are some of the problems you're facing, Germans?
Well, in history, Germany was like the main.
Do people like the top dog, generally speaking, the ones who are underneath? Do they really like the guy that's on top?
No.
No, they kind of don't. So the Germans, plus what happens if you're like really have a reputation for being super militarily dangerous?
Everyone automatically just starts like trying to make fake alliances and attacking us.
Happens a lot. Now, as it turns out, they weren't wrong. The Germans are actually really, really good. The Germans are good enough that they managed to prop up two sort of zombie countries. There we go. that were their allies. The Ottoman Empire is kind of a zombie country, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire is also sort of a zombie country. And the Germans did almost all the fighting. And they still almost got away with it. You also have a bunch of ethnicities that, yeah, that's right. Okay, so what are things like in Germany in 1910?
Oh, sorry. Am I supposed to?
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody who researched Germany, your mics are hot.
Okay, I did. So before World War I, Germany was divided into 25 states. Each state had its own prince, government, and constitution. In 1871, Germany united their 25 states in order to form a complete nation. This newly created Germany had an alliance with Prussia, and its army was led by officers. Germany tried to grow their army but went into debt, and a new idea formed in Europe called Weltpolitik. In other words, world politics, and that's where people got involved in like trying to advise all of Europe to like use the same government. That did not work well. So that's all I have right now. But.
So Germany in 1910, how long has Germany been like a single unified country?
Well, if they've been a unified country since 1871 and it's 2019, then it's
well, no, not now, but in 1910 when we're approaching the war. It's only been about 40 years.
30 years.
Yeah, like 30, 35 years is how that country's only been together as a single nation for like 30 or 35 years. So it's not like, I mean,
they were brand new. They were really young.
I'm personally way older than that. Okay, so it would be like the United States got together when I was 20. So you're not really, there's a lot of people in Germany, say most of the Germans, not really used to the idea that we all fight together as like the same people. So that's a complication the Germans are going to have. Also, Germans, you have certain geographical problems. What were your geographical difficulties when you were playing the game?
We were right in the middle, I think.
Yeah, you're surrounded. Is there anybody you don't have to worry about?
Barely.
Not really. The Ottomans, sort of.
I mean, we made an alliance with Italy in the simulation, but that's different.
But it's really hard for Italy to do much to help you because you have this giant mountain range right here.
You're so far away. And
yeah, you got this giant mountain range right here. It's really hard to get through there. So you got Russia over here, France over here, England is right here on your coast. The Ottomans are a long way away. The Italians are like through this giant mountain range, and the Austro-Hungarians can't really help you because they're surrounded too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough position to be in. Naval power is really difficult because you've got Denmark up here that you got to deal with. You don't really have good coastal access. So it's tough as far as trade goes. And besides which, Great Britain is the biggest naval power in the world. So if they want to cut you off, they can. And they do. The Germans have to hike all the way down here through some really weird and difficult places to get to the Ottoman Empire so they can even build their trade network. I mean, the Germans have serious problems. Given the difficulties that they have to live with, I thought they did pretty well. It's a tough country to play. It's a really difficult country to play because it's hard to keep, you have to talk to everybody. You can't ignore anybody. Speaking of being able to ignore people, hey, Brits. And not in our game, the Germans did not have any friends. In World War I, they had friends, but they had this sort of creepy friends that come over in the middle of the night and eat all the food out of your fridge, but they don't really clean up after themselves and they leave all their dishes in the sink. Those are the kinds of friends the Germans had. Yeah, the British looked down on the Ottomans, thought they weren't worth much, and end up fighting a whole lot of really nasty and bloody battles over in that particular area. The British and the Ottomans have been fighting for a long time, ever since the Crimean War, as a matter of fact. Tell me about Britain. Advantages, disadvantages. Those of you who did your Brits.
Because anybody in Turkey or Austria or Italy all had to spend several turns just coming through the ocean. And then since France had a bunch of ships down in the Atlantic Ocean, that didn't really do anything. So it was incredibly hard to invade Great Britain because we could just have an army right where they wanted and block them conveying into Britain. So
there you go. And that right there is the advantage and the disadvantage of being Great Britain. Nobody can get to you. If you're Britain, do you have to care what the Ottomans are doing?
No.
No. Who cares what the Turks are doing? They're on the other end of the board. They don't matter at all. What about the Italians? Not very much.
Nope.
No, we didn't
France
really have
just
to deal with.
blocks them, and then boom, they're gone.
Austro-Hungarians, do you care? Did any of your units ever even get anywhere near the Austro-Hungarians?
No.
No, you don't even have to worry about any of that. It's a really big advantage if you're British, but there is one serious disadvantage if you're British as well. It's the flip side of the advantage.
That's really hard to get troops to where you want.
Right. I mean, you're awesome on the oceans, but it's tough to get your armies over onto the continent. Now, you had a really good ally in the French. Mm-hmm. This is actually, these conditions mirror, by the way, what it's like in 1910. The British have a gigantic fleet, but their army isn't anything to get excited about.
So you have to have a good alliance with someone who does have a good army so that you can have a good balance.
Right.
That's why we had Russia and we had France.
Now, if you have Russia and France, you don't have to worry about your northern flank, and you don't have to worry about your southern flank. But they have to stay your friends. And look at this map, people. What's in beige?
Germans.
Now they're in orange. Who are your allies? If you're Great Britain, who are the allies?
Italy, France, Russia.
Not Italy, actually not as much. But Russia and France. If you're the British, isn't this ideal?
Yes, then you can just destroy the Germans.
Yes, it's ideal. What if the Russians flake out on you?
You go after them hardcore with the French.
Yeah, you got serious problems, though, because now your northern flank is not protected.
Yeah, so then a bunch of people could attack you. But also, it's such a good alliance that they were actually, I think I read they were actually, I know that they're actually allied with France in the actual war. And I think they're also allied with Russia, but I'm not sure.
Yes, they were. This is not what's on the screen here. That's not a diplomacy map. That's the actual map of Europe in 1910.
Britain would not freaking commit to anything. They just signed understandings with France saying that if the Germans invaded Belgium, Great Britain would be forced to defend Belgium. And
excellent point. Because if you're the British, you actually have a luxury as well. You don't have to care. Because what can the Germans not do to you?
Get across the water.
That's it. You're on an island.
Yeah.
They can actually get across the water, but like you could see it coming just because there's a bunch of stuff in between us.
Okay, true.
English Channel.
Right. But if you have the biggest navy, can they get across the water?
Heck no.
Probably not. Now, they might sneak over, but you can't make a major invasion. if you have the biggest navy. So you know the Germans are not coming across the water, but if you're French, let's talk to the French for a minute. Suppose you're French. Are the Germans a problem? I mean, look at this. Who did France? Who looked at France? Do I have to do this part of the class with the appropriate accent so we can have some Frenchmen? What about France? Does France have to worry about the Germans?
Looks like they ran away.
Well, not in World War I, they didn't. What about the French? Do they have to worry about the Germans, what the Germans are doing? You're darn right they do. This is pretty flat right here. Yeah, and if you're French, you're really worried about this. Now let's look at a couple of, we didn't actually talk about the Netherlands and Belgium. What language do they speak in Belgium?
French.
Mostly French, yes. There is a group of people in Belgium, a fairly large group of people that speak Flemish. Flemish is a kind of Dutch. And Dutch is a kind of German. But this is worth paying attention to. This part of the world right here, first of all, the Danes are not Germans. They're Scandinavians. Oh, yes, the Belch. Yes, that's right. So the Belch, they speak mostly French, and if they don't, they speak Flemish, which is a kind of Dutch. The Dutch, see how the Netherlands is neutral here? So is Spain. That's because the Netherlands, most of Belgium, and Spain were all part of the same empire for a long time. They're not Germans. They have no affinity for the Germans. They don't really like the Germans very much. So they're naturally allied with France. The problem is there's mountains and forest here. So if the Germans are going to invade France, what countries are they going to go through?
Belgium.
Yep. And if the people who speak the same language you do, the tiny little cute country that speaks the same language you do, are being invaded by these big ugly Germans, what do?
You do what the Belches do. You fortify your forts and blast them straight out.
Absolutely. You defend them. You have to defend them. So the French do. The French come to the aid of the Belgians. In fact, almost always the Germans, when they declare war on France, they go through Belgium, and France says, if you come through Belgium, we will declare war on you. And so they end up doing that. The British come in mostly to provide fleet support, but they also start pouring troops onto the continent. But they need to make sure that the Russians are on their side. Why? Suppose the Russians and the Germans are allied. Hey, Russians! Can we talk to the Russians? Are they all drunk? It is the middle of the morning. Have you been swilling down your vodka? Of course you have, because what else will you do in Russia if you are not drinking vodka?
Mr. C.
Yeah.
Did you know that the number one cause of death in Russia is drinking too much vodka?
Yes, I did. I've been to Russia, and I don't blame them one tiny little bit. I did not know that you could make vanilla out of vodka. You're going to have to send me the recipe for that, Sabrina. That sounds like turning lead into gold, which I'm told you can't do, but I'm not sure. People have been trying to figure out how to do that forever. Hey, Russians.
Yeah.
What's your deal? Who are you worried about? What's your country look like?
Vodka vanilla right here.
Vodka vanilla, made by our mother.
We got it.
Oh yeah.
So, Russia.
I need a recipe for that.
I think at this point we're just worried about everybody ganging up on us because we're so big that really you can't attack us very much.
Okay.
we're twice as big as the United States, just to put it into perspective.
You're gigantic, yes.
And 47% of it is just forest.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go through forests and then find a small city that you could probably easily conquer that small city, and then go everywhere because all the cities are scattered. So in order to conquer Russia, you're going to have to march all over the place.
It'd probably take about 2 years just to march to where you want to go.
That's not untrue. And while you're doing it, what about your supply lines? What about your trucks that you're trying to get food to your troops for? What happens to those?
They can easily be ambushed.
There you go.
They were gone.
And then your troops starve, and starving troops don't fight well.
Especially when they're cold.
Right, which it always is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Russia's major advantage is they have all this land. What's their major disadvantages? What was Russia's major disadvantages at the beginning of this war?
Everybody wants their land.
Yes, that's one of them. You got others. You got a lot of problems if you're Russia. What's your government? If you're Russians, what's your government?
The Tsar.
Ah, the Tsar, who is basically just a king. By the way, the word Tsar in Russian is the same word as Caesar. That's where it comes from. Yeah, it's so big that it takes forever to get anywhere, which is a bad problem if you're trying to invade. It's a bad problem if you're not trying to invade. So Russia's got all this space that it's got to defend, which is a problem, but there's not really anything in it, so you don't really have to defend it, so that's not that big of a problem. But you do have the Tsar. What do the people think of the Tsar?
Usually pretty bad. Like, most people hate the Tsar. Ivan the Terrible didn't get his nickname for nothing.
The Romanovs are the guys who are running the Russian Empire at this point, the Tsar, etc. Yeah, another problem is there's a war at all, but a lot of the Russians, they don't want to fight because they hate the Tsar. Like, they seriously hate him and all of his family. In 1917, what is going to happen to the Tsar and all of his family, including Anastasia?
Killed.
The Russians are going to have a revolution. That will make it very difficult for them to fight in this war, because when you're having a revolution, you can't really put your full might. In fact, in 1917, the Russians are going to drop out of the war. I'd rather be Ivan, the awesome. Yes. Yeah, that's a good line. Yeah, so would most people, I think. But he wasn't. He was Ivan the Terrible. And there were, yeah, I know. I thought it was a great line, actually. The Russians are so unstable as a country that they're actually going to overthrow their government halfway through the war. What are they going to install instead? When they get rid of the czars, what are they going to change their government over to?
Isn't it like, I can't remember that part.
The czar is a monarch. So they already have a monarchy. They're going to change it to something else. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's a good guess, Sabrina, but it turns out to be utterly and completely wrong. Somebody was discussing it earlier in the chat. Yeah, they will become communists. The only country in Europe that, well, not eventually not, but the only country in Europe that naturally develops communism. Yeah.
Which sucks, because that means everyone in Russia has to walk about 200 miles to go vote somewhere.
Yeah, remember how bad it was before, like trying to get food and stuff? It's about to get a whole lot worse. At the end of World War II, the Russians will defeat the Nazi Eastern Front, take over half of Germany, all of Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and a big chunk of what was at the time Romania, Ukraine, etc. And they're going to end up with the Eastern Bloc. They will get Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, export communism into Yugoslavia, although Yugoslavia will not be entirely part of the Eastern Bloc. and then they'll start exporting it to the east, into Vietnam, into China, etc. North Korea. Communism will grow like a cancer in the 1950s all over the planet. But that's not for another 50 years. Up until the end, in 1917, the big problem was if you're already not sure that your government is very good and the Germans invade and it looks like they're winning, what do you do to your government? Suppose you are a struggling little business. Okay, let's talk about that. You're a struggling little business. You have a bakery. You make some of the best pies in the world. Well, all the places they acquired, Jim, all those places, they're warmer. The Russians picked up a bunch of warmer places. Okay, so you have this bakery and you're making pies, and man, you think your pies are super awesome. But the owner of the bakery, he takes a lot of the pies home. He doesn't let you take any of the pies home. He sells them in other places that doesn't pay you any money. He makes you work really long hours and really crappy hours. Goodbye, Emma. I'm sad that you have to go to work, but I'm glad you were here. And then the bakery starts losing money and people stop coming in to get food, and it looks like the company's going to go out of business. What do you do to the owner? You would confront him. He says, you're making it all up. You're delusional. He's doing everything right, and he's the best ever. Of course, you would lock him and all of his family in a basement and then shoot them all. No, you would get rid of, well, I don't know, maybe you would, but I hope not. And if you don't, tell me. But you'd get rid of the guy, wouldn't you? And that's exactly what the Russians did. They're like, this all is horrible. This is going terrible. And we have a king, so let's get rid of the king. So they did. And that's the Russian contribution to the war, except that the Russians propped up the Serbians, the Bulgarians, etc., all these guys down here, propped all these guys up long enough that the Austro-Hungarians could never get loose. They could never send any troops to help the Germans because they were always fighting down here and they could never beat them. Bake him into a pie. Thank you, Sweeney Todd. Okay. I know my creepy musicals. That's a super creepy musical. Vodka is terrible. Plus, it's gross. It's not only like it'll rot your insides, it's also gross. I don't know why anybody drinks it. Well, I do. If you live in Russia, I know why you drink it. If you don't live in Russia, then I don't know. All right. Yeah, but only good vacuums suck. Bad vacuums just suck. Ba-dum-tsh. I love English. Okay. So let's talk to our Italians here for a moment. Italians, what do you got to tell me about your country?
Italy is awesome.
True. Pasta. Gotta love it. What did the Italians do in the war? Anything useful?
They come up to Austrian Empire.
They
Underbelly.
make some attacks along this line in here. Because this stuff right here, by the way, along this coast, where there's a bunch of ethnic Italians, this coast is rich. It's beautiful beach country. It's great. If you can get a hold of this, this is great. And the Italians thought, hey, maybe we could take over some of this stuff. That would be great. But they kept a lot of the Austrian armies pinned down here in Salzburg and in the Alps. What else? What do we know about Italy in 1910? Super advanced country? Big military?
No.
No.
It had a lot of people, but it wasn't really a big military.
No, not really.
They focused on their cheese.
Cheese.
And pasta.
Look, food is a big deal, though, right? So if you're the Italians and you can supply food,
food to eat and
If you
to
can
live.
supply food, that's not nothing.
It's not at all.
Not at all.
They had a lot of agricultural stuff.
Italy's very fertile and it's very warm here, so you can grow stuff all year round. Can you do that in Germany?
Most definitely not.
Most definitely not. Okay?
You cannot, my dude.
You cannot, your dude. Italy, you can do that.
Don't even try. It just doesn't work.
The food isn't right. You can grow potatoes, sort of, some of the time. But you're not going to do too well with other vegetables and food stuff like that. Italy, you can grow all of this. So Italy's really important from an agricultural standpoint. Plus, militarily, why is Italy important? Where is it sitting?
Right under.
Right in the middle of, what is this thing here? This big blue thing here?
The Mediterranean Sea.
Right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. If the Italians decide they're not going to let you come through, can you?
No, you're not getting past.
You cannot.
Probably not. You have
They're
to
like
teleport hamburgers. Please invent a teleport of hamburgers. I would love that. No, you can't. If the Italians decide they're going to build a big fleet, what can you do? And what's over here? Remember what's over here? What's over there in the Ottoman Empire? There is some bacon, although they don't eat bacon because they don't eat pigs. What's over here? We talked about it earlier in class. Why did the Germans need the Ottoman Empire? What did they need over here?
People.
People, but also starts with a T. It's how you get stuff.
Transportation.
Transportation, no, it's a much shorter word. How do you get the things you want?
Trade routes.
Trade. So if you need trade in spices, in metals, etc., you need this area. If Italy says no dice, then you can't get over here. So the Germans and the English and everybody are trying to get the Italians on their side so that they can keep their trade routes active to the Ottoman Empire through this area right here. Italy's in a very strategically important position.
It would be cool, but also pretty hard to play the game that we played, the diplomacy game, adding in like trading and resources.
Yes. Are we going to try that later? I'm not saying.
Can we?
I don't know.
Yes, please.
I've never heard of that, but why not?
Let's do it, but with the same countries that we had last time.
We're super,
Yeah.
we can figure this out.
We could be in control.
Okay.
I like this idea.
We can figure this out.
I do. Genius.
So the point of this is everybody on the map here. Here's your lovely, am I showing you the map anymore? No, I'm not. All right, let's go back to the map for a second. That's why you guys didn't understand what I was talking about before. Okay, so this area over here, Italy cuts off the Mediterranean Sea. They grant you access to that. Italians have always been significant traders. Remember a dude named Christopher Columbus? Where did he actually come from?
Italy?
Yeah, he's from Venice.
France.
Yeah, he's a Venetian. He sailed from Spain eventually, right? But he's not Spanish. He's Italian. The Italians, this is your sea trading empire in here. They control all of this stuff in here. If you can't get, you need the Italians to give you access to this area over in here. You need to be able to trade. And the Italians have a certain level of control over that. The Italian armies may be crap, and they kind of are, but the Italian Navy is not ignorable. You can't just not pay attention to them. you got to give them their due. So every country on the board here, Italy, France, Great Britain, the Germans, the Austro-Hungarians, the Ottomans, the Russians, they all have advantages and they have disadvantages. They all have needs and they all have problems. And we're going to screw the lid down on these guys and boom, it's going to blow. And it blows right in here in Sarajevo, a little town in Serbia in 1914. All right. Believe it or not, that was 2 hours. I know, insane, right? But that was 2 hours. Here's your book for the next 2 weeks. You need to be reading this thing up to, and you may have already done this, but you need to read up to page 31.
I'm almost done.
You're almost done with the whole book? Fantastic.
No, almost up to page 31.
Section. Okay. For those of you who are older students, 15 and up, or you're just super precocious because you're just super brilliant, and that's many of you. You also can read some extra stuff here in the First World War and the Guns of August, which is also about World War I. What you're looking for here, I will send this out in an email so you don't have to remember this. But in Guns of August, you are going to want to read up to, the first, 100 pages. Which you should be able to do in like one afternoon.
Already done.
Good book, man. Barbara Tuchman is amazing. And in the
I've
First
read
World
up to
War,
page like 60 in the War to End All Wars. I thought we were supposed to be up to page 30 by today.
yeah, well, we were. So that's good. Keep going. Don't stop.
Good job, Jim.
Chapters?
Yeah. And in this book, chapters 1 and 2. I will send all this out in an email so you don't have to remember this. Okay? Poor Morgan. What's wrong with Morgan?
She said she didn't get to read about her turkey thing.
Okay. You want to? You got a couple minutes.
I thought I had to.
Well, go ahead then.
Okay. So I researched that the Ottoman Empire, though, actually made up of Asians from the Asian steppes. And yeah, and there was a time, it's kind of mixed up, like I'm not doing it in order of time or anything.
Okay.
But there was a time when there was a group of people called the Young Turks, and they wanted to change their government. Yeah. And Britain and Germany wanted the Ottoman Empire to stay. Yeah, my stuff is really mixed up. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Here's what I want you to do. I know many of you went through, did some extensive research, which some of we got to talk about a little bit of that. But if you have a bunch of stuff that you did, and you send it to me, type it out and send it to me. I will read it. I will engage in dialogue with you. Some of you already know because we're already having conversations about this stuff. But if you did the research and you want to talk about it, you want to share it with me, do that. Doing the research is really for you, not for me. But I want to talk to you about it, and I want to see what you did. Because you're going to find things that I don't know, and I'm going to know things that you don't know, and together we're going to learn stuff that we didn't know. So then, that's going to make things better. I will send you an email with assignments, all of this stuff. There is something that I want you to write for me. Some of you I've already talked to, and some of you have already sent me what I want, but for the rest of you, I will let you know what that is. Our next class is in 2 weeks. The stuff before the war is critically important, because if you don't know what's going on before the war, then you don't understand why the war happens. And you don't understand what happens during the war if you don't know how we got there. So that's not wasted. In fact, that's really super valuable. And I want you, whatever you researched, I want you to tell me about it. Just send me an email. The email to send it to is, as most of you know, but in case you did not, the email you want to send it to is mrc@aliasmrc.com. That's the best email to send me. That's like this class's own email. You guys get to send email to that, and essentially like nobody does. Right, yeah. If you just start into the war, it's like starting with Endgame in the Avenger movies. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened that you kind of have to understand, or else none of what's going on in the war will make sense. So that's why it's a good idea to know what's going on before the war. And that's what I wanted you to look at, is what was it like in 1910? Why did we end up in the place that we did? What was the government like? What did all of that stuff? I'll send you some more questions. I want you to write a little bit more on that. And our next class is in 2 weeks. So today's the 20th, not the 27th. It's like October 3, 4, I can't remember. Whenever that is. And somebody look that up and tell me when that is.
It's October the 20th.
No. Our next class is only in 2 weeks. So October 4th. That's what I thought it was. Okay, so October 4th.
Okay.
And then we have class again on October 18, I believe. And we're going to go pretty much year by year from this point on. So we're going to talk about 1914, how the war got started. That's pretty much next time. And then we're going to talk about 1915, the time after that. I think, loosely speaking, we go kind of year by year. But toward the end of the war, we get bogged down some because then we start adding other countries, and other countries drop out and so on. Like in 1917, the Russians drop out of the war, but the Americans get into the war, etc. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. We could seriously do like every day for years and never get even close to this. I also have a couple of podcasts about the war that I think you guys will find really interesting. They're very historically sound, well-researched, and the kind of, I know a lot of you, well, I mean a lot of you, some of you have difficulties in terms of reading, dyslexia or other sorts of reading type things, and mostly you listen to audio, so I want to give you opportunities to do that as well. So we'll talk about, I'll send out an email and we'll talk about all that stuff next time. Here ends the lesson, 11:01. If you got to go, you got to go. If you want to hang out for a few minutes, you are welcome to do that.
In that case, I'm going to take off.
Adios, glad you were here.
Thank you for letting me in.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, see y'all later.
Absolutely. Phantom, see you later.
Did anyone notice that yesterday was 9/19/19?
Nope.
Well, it was. And me and Nora stayed up till 9/19/19. And a screenshot of the clock saying 9/19/19 on 9/19/19.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, people. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Watch for an email, and then so it was 9191999. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Snoopy, the World War I flying ace. We need cartoons. We need those comics. Yeah. Eddie Rickenbacker is and Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron. Yeah, we'll have to talk about those guys. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Also, there'll be a recording of this in case you want to watch it later, although I don't know why you would want to do that.